Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. Well, it's the final trading week of April. Yeah, moved really fast. Here's what's coming up on the show. This week, shareholders on the Nigerian exchange are getting paid, with 5 listed firms set to pay nearly 578 billion naira. And Mali's escalating crisis is fueling fears of trade disruption and weaker investment confidence. And Brent crude has started off the week above $100. And it's great to have you join us. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's get straight to the markets now. And definitely we're still seeing the star commodity again kicking off this week in the green. I was able to actually close last week in the green. So this is the final trading week of April, and we're still seeing oil again starting off strong, hit about $108. That's for Brent crude. So much volatility, but we're seeing big 2% gains to kick off this week. Brent crude, $107.93 a barrel. WTI, $96.52. Still cheaper than Brent. So far, 2.25% higher. We see natural gas also. That's been range trading there between $2.53 to about $3. Not hit $3 in a while now, but that's the picture right there. Oil in the green, energy markets in the green. Let's look at metals now. I was seeing gold prices muted as expected for Monday. Anytime you see oil going up, just expect this color for metals. And we see spot gold, $4,717. Spot silver down a bigger 1.05%, 75.61. Platinum, 2,035 that's per ounce. Palladium, that's 1,494, down 1.02%. But surprisingly, we see copper in the green, about 0.28%. So that's the color right there for the metals that we track, not acting as a safe haven as usual. And obviously, we see the dollar index also up today. All right, to other stories now. In West Africa, we see Ghana's government is facing growing pressure on the domestic debt market after weak investor appetite for longer-term treasury bills. That's the 364-day instrument. It attracted barely half a bid submitted at the latest auction. The development marks the 7th straight undersubscribed auction, highlighting cautious sentiment among investors, despite rising financing needs. Analysts say the trend could, complicate government borrowing plans and increase pressure on fiscal management in the months ahead. And now we see Mali is facing one of its most serious security deteriorations in recent years after coordinated attacks by armed groups, targeted military positions and key infrastructure across several parts of the country, including areas close to the capital, Bamako. The escalation is raising fresh concerns over stability in the Sahel region, where insecurity has already, disrupted trade routes, weakened investor confidence, and strained government finances across Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And we see, let's look at the snapshot there for the key macros. So far, even with all the issues there, we see their inflation rates. That's the previous reading for March. That's 0.7%, less than 1% there. The previous one was 0.6%. That was for February. GDP growth forecast for Mali, 5.5%. That's for 2026. The GDP size is about $33.9 billion. GDP per capita, about $1,300. And we see their main export right there in Mali. That's gold. And looking at gold output so far, it's nice when your major, export is gold, coming at a time where 2025, we did see gold hit record highs, and it's still around, record levels so far. 2023, about 66.5 tons. That was the output. For 2024, 54.8 tons. Then we see 2025, 48.2 tons. So we've seen a gradual decrease there coming from 2023 into 2025, and it remains, Mali's top export, so far. All right, joining me now is Abubakar Al-Hassan, is a geopolitical and intelligence analyst, join me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
It's nice to have you again. It's nice to be on your show once again.
Fantastic. Great to have you. But definitely, we don't like some of these escalations so far. What do you believe is driving this latest escalation we're seeing in the region?
Yes. So the escalation in the region has been something that has been happening in the news lately. In the case of Mali, they have their own local dynamics, whereby we have in the northern part of Mali, we have the Azawad group led by the FLA Azawad region that are fighting for the control of the ethnic group in Mali that are fighting for the control of the northern region. And then we have them also joining up with the JNIM, which is Jamaatul Nasser Muslim, which is a terrorist group that has been terrorizing the much of Sahel. They joined forces together and launched large attacks, form of attacks in multiple theaters in 2 days ago, where they temporarily took control of urban centers like Seva and attacked areas close to the capital, and they also killed the Malian security chief. Now, what we are seeing is we are seeing a situation now in Israel whereby armed groups are cooperating in where they have areas of interest, where their interests align, they cooperate. For example, in the Mali, the way we see it, the FLA, which is the Azawad rebels, the Tuareg rebels, their main goal is to control Mali, northern Mali, the northern part of Mali, while the JNIM is to impose Islamic political Islam in the whole region and carve out a political Islamic sort of nation for themselves. So we are seeing them taking advantage of the porous region, the weak security outfit of in the region, and the porous borders to impose their will.
So, it's quite interesting. One of their main exports, that's for Mali, we see that's gold. And we've seen a gradual drop in gold output, up to 2025. Even though we've seen, record prices, for gold so far. What would you say are the immediate economic implications for Mali, particularly in areas of, trade, mining, because they have to mine, all of this gold?
First of all, you know that Mali is a very, very landlocked nation, which means that most of its goods comes from overland routes. And 60% of this overland route comes from the Bamako, Dakar trade route. And what is very, very important is that last year, we saw a fuel blockade in Mali, whereby the JNIM blocked the route where this fuel was supposed to come to the capital, which led to economic strains. So we are going to see things like that again, whereby, in fact, the Kayes region, which they blocked last year, is the region that produced about 80% of gold and their industrial output, which contributes to their GDP. So their ability to attack this area will damage the economy. In fact, if you recall, Barrick Gold, a Canadian mining group, which is the largest dominant foreign dominant actor in their gold industry, recently signed a deal with the Malian regime after some months of disagreements, to renew their interest in mining gold in the area. They will be right now following this attack. Their risk management team will be having a meeting to reassess their business in Mali. So what we are going to see is a drop in investors' confidence in the Malian gold sector as the insecurity moves from the northern regions to the urban centers in the south and central.
All right. So, in your opinion, what would you say are the short-term expectations?
The short-term?
Short-term expectations with what's played out so far for the region.
Yeah, the short-term expectation is that, of course, there are some battles going on, and then we've seen that the battles are still going on. We've seen Mali, they've retaken some territories in the southern region, such as Sever and Mopti. What we are going to see is that we are going to see intensified attack in this region, so that it will not affect where the majority of where the gold mining is, which is in the south, which is Kayas region. So we'll see them we will see intensified battle along that region in order to make sure that the industrial mines, which is the lifeblood of the Malian economy, is protected.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll definitely keep tracking this developing news right now. Thank you so much, Al Hassan. That's Abubakar Al Hassan, geopolitical and intelligence analyst. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ladi.
All right, let's get a check on the markets now. For the African continent, last week we did see the NGX outperformed major bourses in Africa. The NGX added a whole 3.94%. That's for the whole trading week. Last week, that's about 4%. Then we did see other, stock markets that we track, the likes of Kenya, Egypt. We did see those ones. Kenya 0.50%. That was the performance for the whole trading week. South Africa, definitely that's the metal story there. 3.86% lower, matching the NGX, but for the negative side there. Now we see for the EGX13 Egypt, a big 1.82% advance. Definitely with what's happening with geopolitics in the Middle East, that's also impacted on Egypt. But we've been noticing an easing right there with the impact. So Egypt was able to, that's the EGX30, was able to mop up a nice advance for the trading week last week. Then we bring it home now. Let's see for the NGX this week. We have the likes of GTCO, NASCON, Lafarge, Transpower, NGX Group. They'll be paying a total of 577.93 billion naira, and that's in final dividends. That's for the full year 2025. NGX Group will also be issuing a bonus of 1 share for every 3 shares held. The bulk of this week's dividend payment, so that is attributed to GTCO. They have a payout of about 429.83 billion naira. Then we see Lafarge. They'll be paying about 96.65 billion naira, respectively. These two stocks all lead in annual dividend yield about 9.54%. That's for GTCO, and for Lafarge about 4%. So investors, I know some of you will be smiling later on this week. All right, join me now to unpack the trading week there. We have Nabila Mohammed, a banking sector analyst with Chapel Hill Denham. Great to have you on the show. All right, great to have Nabila. So I could see your mouth moving, but I couldn't hear you. Maybe you have to unmute, or maybe you've already done that. But, today is a historic day for the NGX. Trading started at 9 a.m. and is expected to end at 4 p.m. Today. How are you guys seeing it so far?
So we're seeing activities, play out in the markets. We've seen liquidity flows, and that is exactly what the extended trading hours is meant to do. The extended trading hours is meant to, allow for investors to really participate in the market. And one interesting thing is that this particularly makes Nigerian markets open at the same time with some European markets. I'm talking about the likes of the New York Stock Exchange. We also have the likes of NASDAQ that will still be open concurrently because we now have extended trading hours. So it is positive for the market, particularly in terms of the liquidity flows that are definitely going to improve because of this particular reform that the NGX has brought about.
Right, and when we look at the volume, value of trades and deals, are we going to expect something dramatic, today, seeing the hours of trade are extended?
Most definitely, we should expect something bigger, because even with just the T+2 settlements that we adopted, late last year, we've seen that as at year to date, we are well over 50% in terms of average volume and value traded when we compare it with what we had in 2025 in the same period. And this particular reform is also going to help to bolster more activities in the market. So we should expect something jumbo when we look at the volumes and value traded for the stocks that are listed on the exchange this week and going forward. And again, it will also be shaped by other sentiments that make the market. We've already spoken to dividends, and it's dividend season. We are having a lot of companies pay out for full year 2025. We're even having surprise dividends because of positive earnings from the likes of Guinness. So it is going to also add or impact the flows, the liquidity flows that we're going to expect in the market going forward.
Right, and looking at the NGX, a big gain last week, almost 4%. That's for the whole trading week. We're now the last trading week of April. It's going to be shortened though. What are you expecting? I think we're kicking off intraday in the red today.
Yes, and that's because of some earnings releases that I believe investors were unimpressed about. We're having, bulk of the banks, down, particularly UBA, on the back of the fact that the bank did not declare a final dividend, which is more or less like the first time in over 15 years, because the last time that we had such an issue was in 2011, that the bank did not declare a dividend because it made a loss. That is one. Secondly, I think it is also affecting some of the other banks that are yet to release their results, particularly Access. We are seeing that the stock is also already down around 8%, and this is just because of the fact that they are yet to release their full year 2025 results. And these are some of the things that will definitely shape sentiment in the market. Across other sectors, we're still seeing some interest in Prespo, but overall, the market is intraday, it is down over 80 basis points.
All right, and definitely that's pointing towards a red close, maybe to start off this trading week. And we're seeing oil prices globally kicking off, over $100 per barrel. That's for Brent. So we're seeing pressure on some, risk assets globally. Do you think for this week we should expect more profit taking on the NGX?
So you understand that the global crude oil prices is quite peculiar to our oil and gas sector. And if you look at the oil and gas index on the NGX, it is actually the best performing on a year-to-date basis. So it is positive for businesses that are particularly in the upstream. That's we're speaking to Seplat, we're speaking to Aradel, and Aradel is still yet to release its audited results for 2025 and declare a dividend, but it's already up well over 100% year-to-date. So these are positive sentiments that have fed for those players in that sector. So I would not think that it will be, widespread across all the sectors. Some sectors will still come out positive even at the end of the week. But again, these sentiments, whether it regards to results, releases, and how impressive they are, will definitely shape the outlook for this week on the equities market.
Fantastic. All right, thank you so much, Nabila Mohammed, banking sector analyst at Chapel Hill Denham. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's flip over to the Middle Eastern markets. See, major Gulf stock markets were mixed in early trade today as uncertainty around U.S.-Iran talks that kept investors largely on the sidelines, while the announcement of a new national fund in the UAE that boosted, shares there. We see the Dubai index at 0.60% higher, led by a 1.8% rise in blue chip developer MR properties and a 2.5% advance in toll operator, that's SALIC. Then we'll flip over to other parts of the Gulf region. There we see Saudi Arabia's benchmark index also in a green, but we did see a fall there in about 1.2% fall in one of the Saudi mining companies there, but that wasn't enough to drag it down. The Qatari index, though, that was a lone loser, 0.16%. Lower there, 10,651 points. So that's what's playing out right there in the Gulf region. Flip over to U.S. markets now. See S&P 500 futures, they were relatively unchanged. They're near flat, but the Dow Jones Industrial Average 0.11% lower. Then the tech-heavy NASDAQ 0.17% up at 27,000 points there. We're still watching out for escalation in the Strait of Hormuz. Investors are watching out for what's playing out there and comments coming from President Trump and Iran. Let's flip over now to Asia markets. There we did see the Kospi there about 2.15% to close 6,615 points. The Nikkei also 1.38% higher. We see the Hang Seng Index though 0.20% lower. Flip over to other parts of Asia, and we see the Nifty 50 there trying to make a comeback to the 25,000 level, 0.80% higher, and the Shanghai Composite 0.16%. So investors in Asia Pacific not doing too bad to kick off this Monday trading, even though we're seeing oil prices higher today. Let's take it on to Europe now. Let's see what's happening in Berlin. There we see AI is dominating a growing number of sectors of the economy, but Germany is launching a new initiative to strengthen its own market share in the field. Joining me now, we have Lars Holt right there with DW. Great to have you, Lars. So what can you tell us about the new plans?
Indeed, it's interesting to see Germany going all in on a new project that has mostly one goal for the country: to become less dependent on US giants like Google, Amazon, or Anthropic, those very dominant players. Germany, as well as the rest of Europe, we've had lots of problems with US tech firms in the past. There's been tax avoidance by US companies on all the revenue made in European markets. There's been open questions on privacy concerns and data security and protection. So with AI being the latest technology to grow exponentially and creeping into every aspect of the economy, Germany is doing its best now to establish its own player in the field. And the country is not alone with this position. Canada is also trying to put some distance between itself and its southern neighbor. And now those two are partnering up for a German-Canadian cooperation.
So is this a government initiative, or is this a market-based, private sector approach?
Clearly, the governments of both states are behind this, and indeed the digital secretaries of both countries, Carsten Wildberger and Evan Solomon, have helped put this deal together. But behind the joint venture are a number of privately held companies, Canada's Cohere, as well as Germany's Aleph Alpha. That's already deep in the AI space, and that's backing off the Schwarz Group, and that's one of the country's largest corporations here in Germany. It is mostly known for owning the retail giant Lidl, but it's also long been a player in tech and cloud services. They're now saying they want to develop AI technology and applications for the public and the private sector, for healthcare, for defense. And the goal is to achieve sovereignty in the sector, meaning being able to work without ties to US companies, and also to keep and manage customer data independently and securely.
So how likely is it that this German-Canadian partnership can catch up to the U.S. competition?
Now, that's a good question, because as much as there are well-established players joining forces here, they're obviously not quite as powerful as Google and Amazon and those guys. However, Canada's Cohere does have international clients, and the Schwarz Group has huge server farms and is just building a new one not far from Berlin. They know their way around German and EU regulatory systems, and they got 500 million euros lined up for now. Of course, that pales in comparison to the billions spent in the US. But then again, there are other partners around who want to see a European company succeed in the sector, including SAP, for example. So there is a pretty good chance, it seems, for this partnership to actually get somewhere.
All right, thank you so much, Lars. I'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you. All right, now let's flip over to the digital side of things. That's digital currencies. We're seeing red on the screen for major cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin there did try to make a run to $79,000 per coin, but that happened overnight. Then from nowhere, we see a big pullback, and is back to the 77 range again. Ethereum also down, so definitely with Bitcoin dropping, dragged most of the cryptocurrencies, top 100 on CoinMarketCap. So it's mostly red on the screen. Tron managed to stay in the green, and a couple of stable coins there showing that investors are trying to run into safety. Some headlines there. We see French authorities have indicted 88 suspects linked to a wave of violent, crypto-related attacks involving kidnapping, home invasions, and forced digital wallet transfers. Investigators say several cases may be tied to organized crime networks, raising fresh concerns over the growing security risks facing high-profile cryptocurrency investors right there. And we see Western Union. They said they will launch their Solana-based stablecoin USDPT next month as the payments giant deepens its push into digital finance. The dollar-backed token is designed to streamline settlements across its global agent network, signaling growing institutional adoption of blockchain-based payment systems. Then SWI has introduced a new dollar-pegged stablecoin called USD SWI as the blockchain platform expands its payments and DeFi infrastructure. The asset issues through Stripe stablecoin units is designed to support, faster digital transactions while aligning with emerging global regulatory standards. So this is top stories right there in the crypto market, and definitely we'll see the markets there, investors trying to look for direction, this week with oil prices kicking off Monday and this week in the green. We'll see if that continues throughout this final trading week of April. Thank you for watching Business Incorporated. We're back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.